Hello and welcome to Heartbeat. This week, I had the chance to sit down with Margaret Acres to hear about SPUC's Alma Mater Fund. William will bring us a roundup of news from home and abroad, and Peter takes a look at the compatibility of religion and science. Thanks for joining us, Margaret. Can you tell us why and when you first started with SPUC?
I first started with SPUC, before I even worked for SPUC, I was involved as a student. And so I was involved with the Pro-Life Society at Edinburgh University and came along to the SPUC Youth Conference, which I don't think is an isolated story for staff members to start off at the youth conference. And then I decided to sign up for the Project Truth Roadshow. So this was the first ever Project Truth Roadshow. I'm sure you'll be covering it on SPUC TV at some point. But our first roadshow around Scotland, I signed up. Our colleague Alethea Williams, before she worked for SPUC, was signed up for that one too. So we were on the first roadshow across Scotland, which is how I got to know the team a bit better and how I got to know John a bit better. And so finally, when I moved back to Scotland after getting married, I came on to the team full time, and I'm very grateful for it.
Fantastic. And I never knew that about Alethea either. Brilliant. And can you tell us now a bit more about the Alma Mater Fund?
Yes, so the Alma Mater Fund started in 2019. And it's a grant scheme for students facing crisis pregnancies while at universities. So we started just in Scotland because of resources. We had a little bit of money to start a project like this. We formulated it and got it all started here in Scotland just to see if it would work. Thankfully, very quickly, we were able to expand across the UK, which was a huge expansion because there are 18 universities in Scotland, and there are 10 times that across the UK. So what we needed in terms of time and resources multiplied by 10. But we were really grateful for the support that we had to be able to carry that out. So it's been a labor of love. It's been hard work, but it's good work.
Fantastic. And how does one apply to the Alma Mater Fund?
It's a very simple process. We try and keep it as easy for people as possible. The application is a phone call with our coordinator, Heidi, who is very, very good. She'll walk through the whole application with you, and then we assess that after the fact.
And tell us about some of the women that have applied for the fund.
So we're coming up on almost 100 grants given. So we've worked with a lot of women now from really diverse backgrounds. So some from here in the UK, some from abroad, some who are sort of just starting out their academic journey at university. They're in first year, they're just out of high school. Some who are coming back after having taken a leave of absence. Some who are doing further degrees, some who are doing their undergraduate. Amazing. All across the UK, really, really varied experiences. And we're really grateful to be able to walk through the process with them and learn a little bit about each of their experiences as well.
Fantastic. And why do you think this work is so important?
Universities on the whole are completely hostile to pregnancy and maternity and just totally unaccommodating of those things. And so I think women will often find themselves pregnant while they're studying and have no idea what to do. Their personal tutors will have no idea where to direct them. The staff on their course will have no idea what to do. So they feel as though they just don't have any options. And a lot of them can feel pressure to leave their course entirely or to have an abortion just to be able to finish out their degree. And those are just such false choices, and there is support out there. It's just nobody knows how to access it. So one of the great aspects of the Alma Mater Fund is not only are we able to provide these grants, but we're also able to direct them to these other sources of support that we know exist, and we're able to walk through that process with them. And hopefully, as a result, we change the culture on campus to make it more open to the idea of pregnancy and maternity. We think that's really important.
And in that process, have you found any university hostile to Alma Mater?
Yes. So in advertising to universities, we find a real range of willingness to advertise and willingness to tell students about us. So some students find out about us directly through university staff, and we're really grateful for those staff who are willing to promote us. But some universities are just not willing to keep information or promote any of our work. So we rely on students finding out about us through other means. I recently found out that Keele University, who I just hadn't had any dealings with before, has put information information about us in their pack for pregnant students, which is amazing. The fact that they have a pack for pregnant students is amazing in and of itself. Like, some universities are doing a really good job of being supportive of students in this environment, and some just do an absolutely abysmal job of it. So there's a real inequality in terms of access to care for pregnant students.
And how would you handle the hostility when it comes your way from universities?
I mean, there's only so much we can do externally to promote ourselves within a university that's hostile. Often we'll kind of try and get in through another route. And so if we have pro-life students on campus who are willing to put up posters in student union buildings, talk about us in chaplaincies, that can really work. And so we're really grateful for students who promote us. We've reached out to GP practices on university campuses, chaplaincy groups, those sorts of things. So there are other ways that we're able to reach students who need us. And when we come across universities that are not treating pregnant students well, so we're dealing with an applicant who has been pretty heavily discriminated against, I've got no fear in terms of fighting back. I mean, pregnancy and maternity are protected characteristics according to the 2010 Equalities Act. And so the university has certain duties to these students and should be making certain accommodations for these students. And their lack of knowledge doesn't justify the treatment and discrimination that pregnant students face. And so often I'll help students write legal letters to come back at universities that are pushing them in a particular direction, and just kind of keep pushing back at some of the challenges they face. Because ultimately universities have to be held to account for failing in this equalities duty. I mean, rightfully, universities go out of their way to prevent discrimination in other ways, but this is still a really pervasive form of discrimination that students face.
And why do you think that they do that?
I mean, I think attitudes towards pregnancy have shifted so much in the last 50 or 60 years, and the fact that pregnancy and maternity can inconvenience people, so the idea that you might have to take time off of your course, you might have to shift a placement, staff members at universities just aren't willing to deal with any of that. And they have this attitude of, well, you got yourself in this situation, why should we accommodate it? Which is completely inappropriate, but it is how they often think. And so what we have to do is challenge that idea. It's like, if they really purport to believe in choice, they need to leave those choices open to students too. And if a student chooses to parent their child, to give birth and parent their child, they need to accommodate that too.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of the way that applicants and recipients of the Alma Mater Fund push back against these forms of discrimination that kind of go unnoticed in a lot of university campuses.
It's not really just tied to campuses either. I think there's a lot of young adult groups around the country, in Scotland and England, as part of churches as well, Christian. And I think that is a place where people can spread the message about Alma Mater Fund as well. And there's a lot of students there that just came to mind as you're speaking. So I think if anyone's watching this, let's say, from a young adult background, I think it's one of the ways that you can spread the message is by telling your youth groups, your parish groups, that if there's any young person at university within those areas, that it's well worth mentioning the great work that you're doing, Margaret. And
if I can jump in there. Absolutely. And it's not actually restricted to young people. So
good points, yeah.
Recipients of the Alma Mater Fund have found out about us because there was a poster up in their church. A health worker or a visiting nurse has told them about it. They've seen something on social media. Their auntie saw something on Facebook and passed it on to them. I mean, people find out about us through lots of different channels. And so I would say, no matter if you think you come in contact with students, people do find out about us in all sorts of ways. So please get in touch, request posters, leaflets, little business cards, leave them in the loos in libraries, bring them to your church. Because we have found that people find us through all sorts of channels. And the more people we can reach with that message, the more students in need can find us.
So Margaret, where would people go to get these information packages?
You can either contact the Alma Mater Fund directly through our info@almamaterfund.org.uk email address, or if you contact the SPUC headquarters, they can send you information as well.
And how can people get involved in fundraising for Alma Mater Fund?
Any fundraising activities people want to take on, we'd be most grateful for. We especially love when student groups do it, when chaplaincy groups or pro-life groups do it, because it serves two purposes. So Glasgow Students for Life, as a little shout out, have done multiple bake sales for us. And that serves the dual purpose of fundraising, but then also raising awareness. So it's both sides of the coin, which I just think is fantastic. But we've had people do sponsored walks for us. We've had people, collect in, church coffee mornings. But any way that people are willing to help the project, we'd be most grateful. It means we can support more students. Another additional shout out for the next couple of years, we are the National Action Project of the Knights of St. Columba. And we're really grateful for their support in that. So very grateful that they chose us for the support, and hopefully it will accommodate us expanding even more in terms of who we're able to help.
And are there any weird or wonderful ways of fundraising that are new to Alma Mater?
Oh, I mean, nothing particular yet, but anything people are willing to try.
Anything.
No, well, maybe not anything, but lots of things. I mean,
Yes,
I think a quiz night is well suited to the Alma Mater Fund. Something university challenge style, I think, is thematic. So if you're a pub quiz type, that's definitely something you can give a go.
And can you share with us an example of a typical applicant to Alma Mater?
As I said, our applicants have been really diverse. So they are across a wide range of experiences, of degrees they're studying, of background. But trying to think of a typical case, I mean, it would be an undergraduate student who, has found themselves in this position unexpectedly and just doesn't know where to go. So there might be a lack of family support or partner support, but sometimes they have those things. But even the most supportive family in the world doesn't know what they don't know. And so we can come in as experts and help direct people towards the support they need. So often that looks like not only the grant, but maybe directing them to what benefits they qualify for, directing them to other grants from the university, hardship funding, those kinds of things that they might have access to, and letting them know their rights. And so what are their rights in terms of non-discrimination? What are their rights in terms of what leave they can take and what that looks like, how that might affect their funding? So we look at all of those things. Each case has to be taken on its own because everybody's situation is quite different, and they'll qualify for different things, and every university is quite different. But we do our best to set up a more sustainable system of support for these young women.
Brilliant. And what is the most common discrimination cases that you see in particular?
Yeah, I find one of the things we come across the most is women who are on degrees that require placements, and then their university is totally unaccommodating about adjusting those placements around their pregnancy. That's probably the most common thing we come across. And especially when we're talking about single mothers, that's a real issue, because what that means is she might have to delay her course by a whole year, which is a whole year that she's missing out on income for her family, which is really significant. And so instead of being willing to adjust a placement, whether it's a hospital placement, a field placement, instead of being willing to adjust that by a couple of weeks or shifting them to a different schedule, which often exists, instead the university says, well, you'll just have to defer for a year. Which actually they can't force a woman to do, but a lot of women feel as though that's their only option. But that has a significant financial impact on them. So one of the things we like to explore is there a way that you can finish all your placements and still graduate on time? Because that way you can start providing for your family in the way that is most necessary.
I didn't know that. And speaking of in a year's time, what are the plans for Alma Mater?
We have lots of hope for Alma Mater. One of my personal hopes is that we can use the experience that we've gained working with now almost 100 students to advocate for institutional change. It's something I feel very strongly about. The Alma Mater Fund can't be the only group advocating for pregnant students. I'm sure there are lots of pregnant students who we never reach. So instead, I want to see change happen at a legislative level and see universities held to account for the ways that they fail pregnant and parenting university students. Because it's not just through pregnancy, it's being at university with a child in the way that the universities can be totally unaccommodating. So I'd love to see legislative requirements holding universities to account in terms of how they accommodate and support pregnant and parenting students and their families. So that's one of my main goals. And also potentially empowering church groups and other groups to take on some of these projects themselves, being able to expand to other higher education institutions, to colleges and the like, but that would be a huge expansion. But we also recognize that there are lots of students who are studying in those places who might need our support. So there's lots of directions that we could go. We just need some support and infrastructure to get there.
Amazing. And do you have a lot of follow-up then with the women who've been through the Alma Mater Fund and have given birth to a baby?
Yeah, we try. I mean, they are incredibly busy women. And so, exactly. So, they're working very hard, but we have lots who end up sending pictures of them with their babies, which we just absolutely love to see. And we love to get feedback about what those experiences were like. One of our first recipients, Caitlin, appeared in a video for us with her daughter, Sienna, which is just so gorgeous. And we were so grateful for it. But she calls Sienna her inspiration, that she sort of found that Sienna gave her a renewed vigor to finish her degree.
Exactly. And so the women that you've helped, do any of them go on to raise funds for Alma Mater?
Yeah, yes, they do. More often, they start to spread the word about us. And so they'll say, it took me so long to find out about you. This was such a help. Can I help? So they'll be the ones who are requesting leaflets and posters to spread around the university. And also one of the other ways I often engage with these students is using their stories in that kind of legislative advocacy I'm talking about. So bringing it to MSPs or MPs to try and advocate for that change. So using them as case studies to better the situation for other women, which, is one that a lot of women feel quite strongly about after they faced that sort of discrimination. So I'm always grateful for the women who want to help.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Margaret, for all the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching SPUC TV. If you're enjoying our content, please subscribe and ring the bell for notifications.
A legal loophole in Pennsylvania is sparking worldwide outrage. Brandon Keith Riley Mitchell, a former high school chemistry teacher, was convicted in 2016 of sexually exploiting a 16-year-old student and possessing child pornography. His conviction required him to register as a Tier 1 sex offender and banned him from adopting or fostering children. In spite of these restrictions, Riley Mitchell was able to become a legal parent through surrogacy. Under current Pennsylvania law, surrogacy arrangements bypass the background checks, home studies, and court oversight required in adoption cases. In 2023, he and his husband raised funds to pursue a gestational surrogate. A family friend eventually carried the child, and the couple gained custody. The case has drawn intense criticism, with thousands signing petitions demanding the child's removal and calling for urgent legal reform. Pro-life and child protection advocates say this is more than a loophole, it's a moral failure. Every child deserves to be safe, loved, and protected from the moment of life. The law must defend the vulnerable, not expose them to danger. Lawmakers are now drafting reforms to require surrogacy parents to meet the same strict standards as adoptive parents. York County District Attorney Tim Barker told Newsweek, "I thoroughly appreciate the concerned and outraged emotions expressed by many that a loophole exists in the law to allow a registered sex offender to become a parent through surrogacy without the same intense scrutiny, accountability, and judicial oversight mandated for the adoption process." The consensus is clear. When it comes to children's safety, there can be no room for compromise. A Welsh mother is calling for better support for women with severe pregnancy sickness after she says she felt forced to end her pregnancy. Sarah Spooner suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum, or HG, a condition that causes extreme nausea, vomiting, dehydration, and weight loss. The condition affects up to 3 in every 100 pregnant women, and in severe cases can last up until birth. She repeatedly asked for Zenovia, the only anti-sickness medication licensed for use during pregnancy in the UK. While available in parts of England, it is not routinely prescribed in Wales. Sarah was eventually given the drug and found it more effective than other treatments, but it was only dispensed in short 2-week courses and was difficult to obtain. At one point, her husband made a 100-mile round trip to collect it. 9 weeks into the pregnancy, Sarah was collapsing from dehydration, unable to even eat or drink, and battling a serious eye infection. A hospital doctor warned her that her body wouldn't cope for the rest of the pregnancy. Alarmed by this, she had an abortion. A month later, while collecting antidepressants, she was told there was a prescription for the HG medication waiting for her, leaving her regretting having ended her pregnancy and believing it could have been saved if access to the anti-sickness drugs had been easier. She's now launched a petition in the Welsh Assembly calling for equal access to HG medication across the UK, including Wales. A US Marine has been accused of secretly killing his partner's unborn child in what a federal lawsuit describes as a deliberate act of deception. Liana Davis says Christopher Coop Ryder, stationed in Corpus Christi, Texas, laced her hot chocolate with multiple abortion pills purchased online. Court filings include dozens of text messages showing Coop Ryder urging her to get rid of it, in his words, even before she confirmed her pregnancy in January. After Davis tested positive, she says she refused to terminate, naming her unborn daughter Joy. She told him, "Every time you say get rid of it, it's like an electric shock." The lawsuit claims Coop Ryder brought abortion pills to her home on several occasions. On April the 5th, during what he called a trust-building night, he arrived with hot chocolate from his apartment. Within 30 minutes, Davis says she was in severe pain, cramping, and hemorrhaging. A neighbour drove Davis to the hospital, where doctors confirmed her baby had died at 8 weeks. Davis later found the box of pills in Coop Ryder's belongings. Despite the allegations, authorities say there is no active police investigation. The case now heads to federal court while raising questions over online abortion pill sales and legal protections for unborn children. A former New Zealand MP says his country's euthanasia law has shown that so-called safeguards are ineffective, leaving vulnerable people unprotected. He's urging the UK to learn from their mistakes and block the terminally ill adults end-of-life bill. The Westminster bill, introduced by Labour MP Kim Leadbeater, would legalise assisted suicide for adults with a life expectancy of 6 months or less. It scraped through the House of Commons by just 23 votes and is now heading to the House of Lords. Pro-life groups, including SPUC, are calling the bill inherently dangerous and a direct threat to the elderly, the disabled, and those who feel they are a burden. Palliative care expert Dr. Amy Proffitt has condemned it as deeply dangerous, warning that once the door to assisted suicide is opened, the most vulnerable will always be at risk. Critics also say the bill's committee is stacked with supporters, undermining the chances of real scrutiny. They argue that rather than ending lives, Parliament should strengthen end-of-life care and uphold the inherent dignity of every person until natural death. That's SPUC TV News, bringing to light what others hide.
For many, if not most of our politicians and prominent voices in the media and across academia, religion is for those who reject historical truth and scientific method. It's something embraced by the superstitious and the uneducated. In reality, Christians who believe in God should be confident that in fact our faith is compatible with science and reason. While we're at it, we might spend a little time considering just how solid a rock science offers as a foundation upon which to base a belief system. Recent research suggests that good science tends to throw up far more questions than it can answer. Does it suggest that religion is best placed to answer the deepest questions we ask? And should we be much more confident and more willing to question this superficial embrace of scientism, which has become so much a part of our secular age? I'm Peter Kearney, and this is Viewpoint. I remember reading a magazine article years ago on the celebration of Christmas. I wasn't surprised to find that the author had a pretty jaundiced view of the nativity story and felt it was really just a fairy tale used to mislead children. All the usual cliches were deployed to suggest that those who believed in the reality of Christmas and the birth of the Son of God were hopeless simpletons, largely to be pitied. I was, however, surprised by one assertion that the author made. He claimed that historical truth and scientific method are the rocks on which human reason must be based. I was surprised at this because, contrary to the preconceptions of the author, this formulation is utterly and completely compatible with religion and belief. Light travels at 299,792,458 million metres per second, or 3 times 10 to the power of 8 metres per second. It's pretty fast. And despite what Star Trek tells us, nothing other than light can travel that fast. For generations, students of physics have been taught that the speed of light was what's known as a universal physical constant. It didn't change because it couldn't change. It was always and everywhere the same. In equations and calculations, other parts could change, but the figure for light always stayed the same. Or at least it did until 2015. In 2015, a team of Scottish scientists from the Scottish Universities Physics Alliance at Glasgow and Heriot-Watt universities made light travel slower than the speed of light. They sent photons, individual particles of light, through a special mask. It changed the photons' shape and it slowed them down to less than the speed of light. Scientists have long known that light slows down when it passes through certain materials like water or glass, but it always returns to its original speed as soon as it comes out on the other side. Incredibly, in the Glasgow experiment, the photons continued to travel at the lower speed, even when they returned to free space. To call this work groundbreaking probably doesn't do it justice. It was a stunning finding and will likely alter forever how science looks at light. In 2017, cosmologists at Arizona State University claimed that gravitational waves may have been discovered. Gravitational waves are unpredictable ripples in the space-time fabric, thought to be created by areas of extreme energy, generated by violent occurrences like black holes. This too, if proved, would be a staggering discovery, showing that gravity could no longer be explained by the general physical law put forward by Isaac Newton over 300 years ago. Newton's universal law of gravity proposed that any two bodies in the universe attract each other with a force that's directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Just like the speed of light, it's been one of those universal foundational constants in science, one of the very things that make pompous atheists say, "I believe in science because it's based on facts." Well, the researchers in Arizona appeared to have disproved those facts. Interestingly, over 100 years ago, Albert Einstein actually predicted the existence of gravitational waves in his general theory of relativity, but he never actually observed them. He thought Newton's law was wrong, he just couldn't prove it. More than 70 years after Einstein's death, the gravitational wave discovery could turn out to be one of the most scientific breakthroughs and significant ones in the history of physics. So why do these discoveries matter? Simply because they utterly demolish the false assertions constantly made by atheists, secularists and humanists that through science we can measure and know everything in the universe, and thanks to science, it can all be neatly and fully explained, leaving no need or place for a creator or deity. In other words, science is a solid rock upon which you can base your philosophy of life or your belief system. This creed, or belief system, let's call it scientism, is dealt a fatal blow by such research. It leaves atheists who've spent years saying things like, "I don't believe in religion, I believe in science," looking completely ridiculous. Their simple fairy tale theory, which says we can observe, explain and account for everything, is of course superficially attractive, but in reality it's an illusion. What is emerging increasingly from some fascinating and challenging research in the world of science is the extent to which the known world is in fact unknown. Unknown to us on so many levels. In truth, science is not a solid rock upon which you can base a philosophy of life or belief system. Belief in God, on the other hand, is. It's just over a year since the late Professor Emeritus Peter Higgs, formerly of the University of Edinburgh, died at the age of 94. And it's more than 10 years since he jointly won the Nobel Prize in Physics for, quote, the theoretical discovery of a mechanism that contributes to our understanding of the origin of masses and subatomic particles. The discovery of this particle, which was quickly christened the God particle by the media, brought him worldwide recognition. Despite its seemingly spiritual title, the God particle, or Higgs boson, to give it its full name, does not conclusively prove the existence of God. Rather, it conclusively proves the existence of the inexplicable. It is, in effect, a proof of doubt. Though lauded and praised by science and by many atheists who are all too eager to use any scientific discovery or development as a nail to be hammered into the coffin of religion, it does in fact present a problem for science and believers in scientism. Professor Higgs and his colleagues proposed this particle as a way to explain the existence of mass, since without it, science can neither explain why matter has mass nor why it sometimes behaves as it does. By postulating that this particle exists, that problem is solved by presuming the existence of another, until now unseen or unknown entity. This isn't the first time that science in general and cosmology in particular has had to come up with a workaround to explain the inexplicable. For example, to explain why, far from slowing down, from the moment of the Big Bang, the expansion of the universe appears counterintuitively to be speeding up. By the way, on the Big Bang theory, it was a Belgian Catholic priest, physicist and astronomer, Georges Lemaitre, who first proposed this theory. The idea that the universe is expanding from an initial primeval atom or singularity. The so-called scientific explanation for the beginnings of the universe is far from neat and mathematically exact as a calculation, which many people assume it is. Since the media narrative we're constantly exposed to proposes rigorous scientific method as the universal panacea to all our doubts and questions, the fact that it does nothing of the sort comes as a bit of a shock. That so many theories have had to emerge to fill gaps in our scientific knowledge is in itself an acknowledgement of the unknowable and the unprovable. Put another way, we don't know everything. Science is prepared to accept that things which can't be seen or detected can still have their existence proved by the measured reaction of other bodies affected by them. That's quite a spiritual formulation. All in all, these messy realities deal a real, if not fatal, blow to atheists and humanists who've invested so much of their energy in the primacy of scientism, a false creed which asserts that we can measure and know everything and that everything can be fully explained. Therefore, there is absolutely no need or place for a creator or a deity. In reality, we can't and don't know everything. There is a great deal which is unknowable and inexplicable, and always will be. We've grown up believing that such situations don't exist in the measurable and empirical world of science. Well, they do. They always have. Faith and science are far more compatible and closer to one another than we might think. It's worth taking a moment to read once again the citation which won the Nobel Prize, committed and presented to Professor Higgs. They praised him for the theoretical discovery of a mechanism that contributes to our understanding. In the end, he might not have discovered anything other than a neat way of papering over our ignorance of subatomic particles. But if we are willing to recognise and praise, quite rightly, his lifelong struggle to explain a temporal mystery, a mystery in the physical world, shouldn't we at least do the same for generations of theologians who have tried to do exactly that with mysteries of the spiritual world? Science and religion are, after all, two sides of the same coin.
That's all we have time for this week. If you enjoyed the show, then please like, comment and subscribe for weekly videos. And if you've any stories you think we should cover, then please email us at the address on screen or in the description below. Thank you for watching.